Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. China has recently officially lifted restrictions on manufacturing, which is an important change for Apple. Apple has long been trying to shift its supply chain to markets, such as India, to reduce its dependence on the Chinese market. However, this transfer did not bring the expected results. After years of development, the Chinese market has become Apple's largest overseas consumer market and production and manufacturing base. However, with China's crackdown on Huawei, Apple has gradually begun to move to Southeast Asian markets such as India. However, the manufacturing and management level of the Indian market cannot compete with that of China. The shortage of labor resources and environmental uncertainty also bring great risks to Apple's supply chain. Under this circumstance, China has lifted restrictions on the manufacturing industry, which has improved the manufacturing level and efficiency of the Chinese market. At the same time, it has also provided a more complete and stable supply chain system. In recent years, multiple rounds of sanctions by the United States have affected many of Huawei's businesses. In this regard, many people question why China does not also impose sanctions on Apple. The reason is that Apple's supply chain in mainland China is huge and will affect many jobs. China has always treated Apple and its supply chain with preferential treatment, but the recent announcement of the disassembly of the iPhone 15 series has disappointed China. Apple's intentions have gradually been exposed. It's no wonder that Cook recently visited China again for operations. Everyone in China knows that more than 95% of Apple's products are produced in mainland China. For example, Foxconn produces most of the world's iPhones. Among them, Zhengzhou Foxconn takes over 50% of the production capacity, ensuring the timely supply of Apple products. It can also be seen from Apple's supply chain that among the 186 supply chain companies, the number of Chinese manufacturers is the largest, including 94 manufacturers in Taiwan, of which 49 are mainland manufacturers, accounting for 26.3%. The above data means that the mainland supply chain is very important to Apple, and Apple also attaches great importance to the mainland supply chain. However, this is not the case at all. There are a lot of mainland supply chain manufacturers, but they are not core suppliers. Mainland manufacturers supply a lot of parts and components, but their value ratio is very low, unimaginably low. The reason why Apple chose them is most likely because products from the mainland supply chain are cheaper and more cost-effective. Recently, Japanese media cooperated with a disassembly agency to conduct disassembly and cost analysis of Apple's new flagship mobile phone iPhone 15 series, and announced the proportion of parts provided to Apple by different countries or regions, which further confirmed the above situation. Among them, American parts account for about 33%, followed by Korean parts at about 29%, Japanese parts at about 10% and Taiwanese parts at about 9%. While mainland parts account for only 2%. In the past 3 years, among Apple's 3 series of iPhones, the proportion of American parts has been increasing, while the proportion of mainland parts has been declining year after year. Among the iPhone 13, 14, and 15 series, the American models accounted for 22.6%, 32.4%, and 33% respectively. The proportion of mainland components was 4.5% for iPhone 13, 3.8% for iPhone 14, and dropped to 2% for iPhone 15. The above proportion is calculated based on the cost of parts. Therefore, the more parts supplied by Chinese companies, the lower the value of a single part. This means that the mainland supply chain is at the bottom of Apple's profit value chain. Even so, Apple continues to reduce the proportion of mainland parts and components, and continues to abandon mainland supply chain manufacturers. The most typical examples are O-Film and Gertech. After O-Film was eliminated from the supply chain by Apple, it suffered losses for 3 consecutive years. Its net profit once plummeted 96%. Gertech's net profit plummeted 58%, and its market value evaporated by $7.9 billion overnight. This dismantling by the Japanese media directly caused a reversal of Apple's situation. China's long-standing perception of Apple's supply chain in the mainland has been completely overturned. And Apple is still silently taking the final step, which is to transfer the assembly industry chain. Under Cook's active promotion, assembly manufacturers such as Foxconn, Pegatron, and Wistron have set up factories in India, Vietnam, and other places in recent years. Although the profits of the assembly industry are very low, it has a great driving effect and is also the final step in the transfer. So China has recently begun investigating Foxconn. This is not only a slap on Foxconn, but also a warning to Apple. Apple not only gives the high-profit and high-value parts of the supply chain to the United States, Europe, Japan, and South Korea, but also wants to move the assembly industry chain away. This will take away not only manufacturers such as Foxconn, but also the electronics behind the entire smartphone. Industrial chain. Recently, Cook visited China for the second time this year. He probably realized something. He went to Luxshare Precision, but not Foxconn. Foreign media said that Cook should be anxious. During his visit to China, he donated 25 million yuan to support rural education and hoped to achieve win-win cooperation with mainland supply chain companies. The reason for this is because mainland China is Apple's second-largest consumer market. What prompted Cook to make the change was probably the impact of the Huawei Mate 60 series. In the 40th week of this year, Huawei's mobile phone shipments surpassed Apple's and became the first. What's worrying is that the return of Huawei's mobile phones has also revitalized the relevant industrial chains in mainland China. O-Film and Gertech almost closed down because orders from Huawei were revived and they began to recruit a large number of workers and work overtime to produce. This directly broke Apple's migration plan, and Huawei drove the domestic mobile phone industry chain. Apple's choice will inevitably affect its future in the mainland market, and the consequences may be unimaginable. Let's wait and see.